Right. After the break, we going to discuss about planning for competitive advantage. It's a continuation. Here, there's a matrix, right? We call this as a strategic business or IP planning because once we need to understand our position and in an organization, how can we go further and to take a decision which direction we should we move. uh, People use this sort of a matrix. We call it as a strategic opportunities matrix, right? It's a evaluation of strategic potentiality of proposed business IT opportunities. Basically, once we have different opportunities identified, and it will be give a kind of a, a measurement to identify the risk and payoff probabilities of a given situation, right? Therefore, this is like a decision-making tool in a way, and in another way, it gives you a kind of a prioritization, right? Based on return on investment. The return on investment might be should be money, time, or other resources which you can use for uh, any situation that you are come up with. So once you think of this matrix, we have uh, x and y axes. We'll see that uh, the y axis is strategic business potential, which is attractiveness of opportunity or how much you want to do it. We come up with a possible thing to do for an organization, then you can identify how much is attractive, right? Or how much you need to do it for your organization. We can simply identify high and low, right? It's very subjective in a way, but you can identify if you are having a kind of enthusiasm to do it, it will be very high. Or if there's no such enthusiasm, you are not interested on doing that, but there is a possibility of doing, we can categorize it as a low, right? And in the x-axis, firm's ability to deliver with it with the information technology, or your viability of doing that, or how much potential do you have to do it with the support of information technology, right? And or will you actually make money at it, is the x-axis. So once you think of this xy coordinates in this matrix, you can easily identify the four different cells, right? Which is, you can see, um high attractiveness, so high attractiveness of the opportunity and high ability to do or deliver with the support of information technology. We call it as exciting situations, exciting opportunities, right? And it probably have a high success or high payoff opportunities are categorized under this. Therefore, you can list down some of the opportunities which are having the high attractiveness as well as high ability to deliver with information technology. And if you have a back burner which is low attractiveness and low ability, we are not always suggesting to go for that. Which is a higher risk, and lower payoff opportunities can be categorized under there. And safe but not low payoff opportunities, bread and butter. Some people call it as bread and butter, where you can categorize under this. And needs work, where you have a kind of a burning need, right? High need is there, but the ability to deliver with IT is not sure sometime, right? The risk is high, the payoff might be high, and those are the opportunities. Therefore, once you categorize these opportunities under these metrics, you can identify which is exciting ones might be more advantageous as well as more easier to operate, but this one is not recommended to operate. And here bread and butter is something like that. You can have the ability which you can find possibilities of getting, because it's available, it is available, and you know how to do it. You can deliver with it, but you might not interested that much. You can find ways of doing that. And here, if it is the IT is not supporting, but you have a burning need, you might find different other ways of doing that. So by understanding this categorization, organizations can think which opportunities you should prioritize first, right? Similar to the competitive planning for competitive advantage early explanation, by the value chain, you can identify and prioritize how you can work it and what is the priorities given to different, say, possible solution or IT solutions. Here also, if you think of different opportunities, then you can think of the way that you can rate them and way that you can carry out them with the different prioritization, right? Um, Another tool you might have heard of is SWOT analysis, right? This is evaluate the impact of each possible strategic opportunity can have on companies and its use of information technology. Every time once you think of business organization, there you can identify different opportunities and you can do a kind of SWOT analysis. What are the strengths of companies, core competencies and resources, right? You have the weaknesses, opportunities and threats of any situation. So once you think of these, you can identify it, right. If there are weaknesses, how to overcome these weaknesses. There are threats, right? How to mitigate those threats and reach the target of a given strategic opportunity. Likewise, this is another tool people can use in taking a competitive advantage as well as taking a decision and say plan for competitive advantage. And another model which people use is a business model, right? Business model is usually business model we identified as the way that organizations make money, right? Or how the business deliver value to its customer is simply understand as a business model. Once you think of business model as a planning tool, is also possible to understand ways of planning or what are the things that you can do to get the benefit with the support of a business model, right? The usually business model is used for the purpose of understanding the business and getting it clear the way that fundraising happen or funds generated to organization. But the same model can be used in planning. That's the thing that it explained here in this explanation, right? The business model answered vital questions about fundamental components of a businesses, such as customer value, same as that we have discussed in strategic questioning. Here you can think of what are the customer value, right? Offering something distinctive or the lower cost than competitors. What are the things that you can do? What competitive moves are there? How you create the value to the customer and scope, right? Scope is another important thing in business model where you can think of demographic and geographic range of procedures, products or services, how you are identifying the scope that you are operating, right? What are the different products that you are in the product line or the services that you are providing to the customer, right? What areas of the country or what areas in the world you are covering, right? And the pricing, how prices are price the value, right? Once you think of the identify the value of the product or a service, how you give the price to that value, right? Likewise, pricing is another thing relevant to the business model where it will be helpful in planning also. And revenue sources. Revenue sources are what are the ways that you can earn money basically, or who pays what value and when, and what places and what ways that you can earn money, and how you generate revenue. And some connected activities are also there. What set of activities firms have to perform, right? Because business model will give a overall idea about generating money to the organization. So that overall idea is important to understand the planning and how you are making that planning process with the support of the business model concept in an organization, right? And the capability gap might be another thing. What are the capabilities that you have and what are the capabilities that you need? The capability gap is another thing that you can fill up in the planning, and the final, the sustainability, right? That what make difficult others to imitate you, right? If competitors are trying to copy you, and how you can sustainable, how you can make it that competitiveness is sustained, because competitive advantage is very difficult to sustain, because once you think of any strategic move that you take, very soon in a short period of time your competitor might copy you. Therefore sustainability is very much difficult thing to handle, but most of the companies, what they do, they change their strategies. Right? Once they change their strategies, it's very difficult for a competitor to copy you or to imitate you, right? That's the idea. Therefore, once you think of a business model as a planning tool, it also another strategy organization can use in generating, in doing planning, because why all these planning are important. Once you are thinking of the way that you can uh, uh, use the technology in your organization, right? And with all these tools here, it gives you a kind of a way, the business model force rigorously and systematic thinking about the value and viability of business initiatives. As I explained you in the business model components, it gives you an overall picture of the organization. What are the things that the organization can think of once you are thinking of the generating funds for the organization, or creating value for the organization, and because of that, the value and the viability of the business initiatives will always evaluate with the support of business model, right? And as you say, that strategic planning process is then used to develop unique business strategies that capitalize on business model. So once you understand these are the facts that I need to highlight, I need to concentrate in the business model, then different business strategies could be used. For example, if you are thinking that, right, my capability gap is this, then I need to develop these capabilities. Then you need to concentrate more on use of technologies to improve those capabilities and put more weight on that side of the business model, right? Then the main purpose is to gain competitive advantage in an industry or a marketplace. So as we are continuous to discuss, taking competitive advantage as a planning tool, the business model also can be used as a tool in identifying and prioritizing business strategies and take competitive advantage over the competitors, right? Likewise, these tools will be helpful, and these tools will always give support to go into this process, right? This is the business IT planning process and discovering innovative approaches to satisfy companies' customer value and business value goal. Just see this process, how this step-by-step process will get you into the direction of application development, right? The customer and business value visioning, which is a broader thing. As I started with the planning process, you are identifying the and basically identify the customers and business value where organization is focused on. That then the key insights might be taken into the business strategies and models, right? Different business strategies and models with this view, with this vision in mind. You can identify key insights. These are the strategies of the organization. I might be going to the cost leadership. I might be going to the differentiation, and these are the models of achieving that. And to achieve that, key objectives, right? What are the strategies? right? What are the business strategies and IT strategies? And if it is think of a application going to be implemented in an organization, what's the architecture of that application? Likewise, you need to have strategies and architecture in mind and prioritize the business application development, right? The business application development is not happen merely development and deployment, not happen merely by copying the competitors' move. That's the thing that we need to understand. So every time that this process, right, this process comes with the overall picture of the organization, not only the e-business initiative. That's the thing that we need to understand. That's the thing that we are identifying as the business IT planning process. Therefore, business application development or a business information system development and deployment is a final process where we targeting. This process is always filtered through different activities, and you can see the feedback also there. Every time that once you deploy the system, there need to have a feedback where you might sometime refine your visions in the organization based on these feedbacks, right? So this is a kind of a view which we can think of how you achieve the business value and the development approach, how you are reaching to the business application development. All in all, we basically go into this process with this thing in my mind. That's the thing that I highlighted at the beginning. Once somebody have asked the question that do we need to develop separate vision for the business e-business activities, I said no, we need to go as a whole, considering both business side and IT side together. That's why I said that we need to have a business plan and IS plan which combine together. We call this process as co-adaptation process, right? Think about the organization. In your organization, even this co-adaptation process should be there if the company is succeeding, right? Develop complementary business and IT strategies by CEO and the CIO, right? Who's the CIO? Yes, CIO stand for
Chief Information Officer.
Yeah, sometimes call it as Chief Information Officer, or sometimes call it as Chief Innovative Officer, right? Why the name it used? It's basically linked with the information or innovative ideas with the support of technology. So the CEO, you know, that Chief Executive Officer, he's the one that to concentrate about the business side. The IT side is concentrated by CIO. So what it says is this adaptation is like a intersection between two sets, right? So it's like an intersection between two sets. Likewise, here this is the view of the CEO, right? This is the CEO's view, right? And this is the view of the CIO, right? So once you think of this interaction or the intersection, this part is very much important, because if you are not having this intersection part, right, the far that it adapt together, the far that it intersect together is the point where the company success with the support of technology. If this intersection is not there, the company might go into two different directions. CIO might be directing into one direction and CEO might be directing into another direction. It should not be happen. That's why I always say that. Therefore, that's why the topmost people, the CIO and CEO, should work together to improve this interaction, right? The overlapping. If this, that's why I say that co-adaptation process, right? It need to adapt. You can't say that CIO can't say that no, our direction is different. You do your job, I'll do my job. Never it happened in that process. So both these parties need to be combined and think as a whole organization. That's the idea. That's it proposed by business IT planning process. The business IT planning process has three major components, right? In this discussion, CEO and CIO, strategic development, develop business strategies to support company's business vision. Use of IT for innovative e-business system might be the vision. Therefore, this is not should not be only supported by CEO. This should be supported by CIO as well as CEO. All right, because it should be a strategic development, should be a strategic activity for a whole organization, not only the IT department's responsibility. And resource management, develop strategic plans for making or buying decisions. Right, that's a very crucial thing because maintaining an IT division is very much costly. So sometimes you might be go for a making your own IT development or developing your own IT applications. In-house development teams must be there, or you might be outsourced, right? Or you might be buying off the shelf by keeping several different people at the IT division, right? But there are strategies to manage or outsourcing IT resources. It's not only the hardware, it might be software, data networks, or IS personnel. Sometimes you might be not having a say AI scientist or somebody. Artificial intelligence expert is not there in your organization. In that case, if your AI expert is needed, you might be hire somebody from the outside industry. Likewise, making a buying decision is very effective decision to take and important decision to take while you are thinking of the resources. That is to where you are locating the resources, how you are buying the resources, whether you are going to hire resources. Likewise, different decisions has to be taken. In nowadays, since we have a lot of say cloud-based applications, some people go for cloud-based applications, identifying even it might be helpful for the organization not to spend a lot of money, but to hire say might be software, hardware, resources, data, say data storages. All these things now could be higher rather than buying and keeping their own in their own premises. And technology architecture is also important in such a process, right? Making strategic IT choices that reflect an IT architecture designed to support business IT initiatives. So there should be a technological architecture, right? We call it as information technology architecture. The next slide explain you what is the technology architecture. These three major components: strategic development, resource management, and maintaining a technological architecture, or planning and managing a technological architecture is important in this co-adaptation process in an e-business initiative, right? This is the IT architecture we usually identify as created by strategic business IT planning process, right? As I explained you earlier, in the IT architecture is a one important part, a point where we need to consider at the strategic business IT planning, right? It's a conceptual design. These are the major components. You have to have a technology plan, computing and communication platform. What are the computing technologies? What are the communication technologies you need to hire or you need to purchase or need to outsource? Likewise, you need to have a technology plan, and you need to have a data resources, right? Databases and data warehouses on providing data. What are the where you locate data storages? What are the data storages? Whether you have your own data storages and whether you have your own data repositories or data warehouses, you need to think of that as another component in information IT architecture. Data application architecture, right? Whether you need to have a integrated system for cross functions, right? What do you mean by cross functions? Cross functions are most of the time nowadays, since you can understand it by enterprise applications. Most of the enterprise applications support cross-functional business activities, not only single functional area, right? If you think of the HR, employee attendance is a HR functional system, right? It's only concentrate about the mainly about the HR side. But think of a order fulfillment process. Order fulfillment in an organization is not a single functional area, single functional activity. Order fulfillment basically happen with around 3 different divisions combined together. In the order fulfillment, if the customer come to the organization and place the order is handled by marketing people, right, or the sales people. Right? The sales people handle the order, sales people take the order, and all these things happen with the sales people at the initial stage of order. But the order is produced by the production people, right? Production people will produce the product based on the order, and once the order complete, the order will be handed over to the customer, and the payment process is handled by the accounting division, right? Once you complete the order fulfillment process, the sales division, production division, and accounting division or the finance division need to join together in order to complete this whole process of order fulfillment, right? In that process, it's not a single function, it's a cross-functional. We call it as a cross-functional, right? The cross-functional applications are very much highly used in nowadays. That's why the ERP, Enterprise Resource Planning System, is a cross-functional application, right? Say supply chain management is a cross-functional application since it is linked with some of the other divisions also nowadays. Likewise, many of the applications nowadays integrated and cross-functional, not limited to a one functional area, such as HR application or employee attendance system is a one functional activity. Right? Likewise, not as single functional activities. Now ERP as such are cross-functional applications. The application architecture, you need to decide whether you are going to go for a single functional activities, single functional applications, or a cross-functional applications such as ERP for your organization. Right? There's another major components of a IT architecture. And IT organization, right? IS functions and specialist distribution, right? How you locate your IS resources, IS specialists, right? Do you have your organization having the resources and the personnel to operate your information system applications, right? If you are not having resources such as server locations, server in your organization, you can go for a service providers, internet service provider, for example, right? It might be your server might be located in such a service provider, and you are doing all these activities, and service provider look after your server, web server, and your application server might be there in your organization. The web activities, everything is operated in the say application in a web server which located in the service provider's location, right? Likewise, the how information technology organized within the organization and from the organization need to be explained in IT architecture, right? So these 4 components are there in IT architecture where it will be helpful for people to understand and use information technology. Right? So while we are doing these activities, we need to have some sort of evaluation or basically the measurement. Right? The measuring companies' activities in terms of vision and strategies, we use the concept called Balanced Scorecard. Have you heard of this? What is Balanced Scorecard? Who's the person who introduced Balanced Scorecard?
Kaplan and the colleagues.
Yes, so Robert Kaplan. Robert Kaplan explained the Balanced Scorecard, and basically Balanced Scorecard is a tool, right? It's a tool which will help you to identify different evaluation mechanism, not only the financial but also other related things, right? So it say that it's a give managers a comprehensive view of the performance of the business, and these are the 4 processes: translating vision into the operational goals, and communicating vision and link into the individual performance, business planning, and strategy adjustments. Likewise, different activity, different things can be done with the Balanced Scorecard. Then the Balanced Scorecard mainly uh, think from these perspective. It's not only the financial perspective, customer, right? Financial perspective also included. Earlier, before the Balanced Scorecard introduced, the things are viewed only from the financial perspective, which financial performance is the only thing that measure the success, right? Or basically the return on investment. But with the Balanced Scorecard, a different view was introduced, and basically look for customer or measures having a direct impact on customers, such as time to process. Phone call might be an example, and business process, which reflect the key business process, uh, such as time spent on prospecting or process cost, right? So different business process might be there in one another perspective, or the learning and growth company's learning curve, such as how many hours are spent on staff training, might be a different measurement in scoring of the organizations and its abilities, right? Let me check that there's a video where you can see the explanation of Balanced Scorecard. Give me a minute.
Welcome to HSM Special. Today I have the honor to have with us here Dr. Robert Kaplan. As you know, Dr. Kaplan has been developing together with some other authors and consultants very important tools for management. The most known are the ABC costing and the Balanced Scorecard. Professor Kaplan is graduated and obtained his master's degree in electrical engineering from MIT and has a PhD in operational research from Cornell University. He is chairman of the Palladium Group and, of course, a well-known author of several management books. So, Professor Kaplan, welcome. Nice having you here.
Nice to be with you, Julio.
Very good. So could you, in brief words, what is really the Balanced Scorecard? What is it for? And how it came to your mind? How do you research and decided that this would be an important tool for companies and now for government?
Well, I recognized in the 1980s that the financial measurements by themselves were insufficient to guide companies to success. That they were really measures of a past strategy and past performance, but didn't provide indicators of the future. So many companies might be creating a great deal of value by creating better customer relationships, by being better at quality and delivering on time, and by attracting and retaining terrific employees and giving them the skills they need to create more value for customers. But if you didn't measure those things, you weren't sure, are you really achieving that? And in the short run, companies could report better financial performance by cutting back on training employees, by not maintaining equipment, by not improving processes, and by alienating customers, not investing in customer relationships. And so we wanted to come up with a broader set of indicators that would better reflect the total value creation that companies experience in a period. And we didn't want to throw away financials. They're still important. They measure success ultimately. But we needed to supplement them with metrics about what the best companies were doing in the short term to create future value. And so those were measures related to customer relationships. It was measures related to process improvement and innovation, and measures related to employee capabilities and motivation. So you can think about the Balanced Scorecard as a more robust, general set of measurements that goes beyond the financials to capture the drivers of future value creation.
Who was your first customer that applied successfully the BSC?
Well, the first set of companies that came to us right after our article was published there was an engineering construction company, division of Halliburton, for how to guide underwater construction projects with their targeted customers like Shell and British Petroleum. We worked with a major insurance company, Cigna Property and Casualty Insurance, We worked with a major bank in New York City, then called Chemical Bank, and then emerged with Chase Bank. And also mobile marketing refining in the U.S. So I would say those were the top 5 companies.
Pioneers.
Yeah, they were the pioneers. In fact, in our first book, we talked about mobile. We called it Pioneer Petroleum.
Right.
To recognize that. But that was really mobile.
Right. That is about the balanced scorecard. I believe that since you have heard from the Robert Kaplan's wording that it will be helpful to you to understand the measurement is not financial only. It goes into different directions, right? So once you think of these measures, that it will be helpful to go in and not only just doing it, but measuring and understanding whether it's going in the correct direction. And this goes into the identification of identification of business IT strategies, which any company can use for different other situation. Even here, it gives into strategic positioning metrics, where you can help companies to identify where to concentrate its strategies, the use of technologies. So we have, as you have understood in the earlier slides even, and different technologies such as e-commerce or e-businesses, and basically want to optimize its competitive advantages. So once you are identifying different such technologies, and whether those technologies helpful to the organization and how it can be positioned, the organization will be discussed with strategic positioning metrics. Here, it says that, for example, internet technologies can support e-commerce or e-business applications to translate communication barriers or establish connections that enhance the productivity or stimulate innovative development. Likewise, different technologies could do different things. So here, this matrix is another matrix where we call it as a positioning matrix, helpful you to understand, right, the strategic impact of the technologies for organization, right, how it will be helpful, and how it could be used in the organization. This is a matrix, we call it as strategic positioning matrix, having 4 quadrants, right? For example, if I have here also, we have since it's the matrix, we have x and y axis. The external drivers is the y axis, and x axis is the internal drivers, right? So here you can see the external drivers and internal drivers. Once you think of internal and external drivers, what it do, you can easily understand these quadrants. Here we name the quadrants in the way we can put this as Q1, right? Q1, this as Q2, this as Q3, and this as Q4. Right, and once you think of Q1, right? Q1, it's product and service transformation, where you can see that the product and service transformation, it says that the company and customers, suppliers, and competitors are extensively networked, right? Because it's that external drivers and internal drivers both are high, and internet-based technology should implement throughout the company operations and the relationship. And the main thing is that develop and deploy new internet-based product and services that strategically reposition it in the marketplace. Therefore, since these external drivers and internal drivers are high in this place, you have a good opportunity of implementing new technologies as well as reposition the marketplace, where because internet-based product and services are freely flowed internally and externally in such a organization, right? And if it is a Q2 or quadrant 2, capitalize on high degree of customer and computer connectivity and use of IT, right? So because you have a high external drivers, but internal drivers are low because Q2 is here. Q2 is here where we have the high external drivers, right? And internal drivers are low here in that case. So that's why it says that capitalize on high degree of customer and competitor connectivity. You have a good connectivity with the customer and the competitor. Use e-commerce website with value-adding information services and extensive online customer support, because you can improve the customer support and you can take the benefit out of customer-related activities. And Q3 is the cost and efficiency improvements, where you can see there are Q3, where you can see the external drivers are low and the internal drivers are also low, right? That in that case, right, the low amount of internal company, customer and computer connectivity and use of IT via the internet, then what you have to do is use the internet as a fast, low-cost way to communicate and interact with others, because you need to improve that connectivity, and you can use the email and chat systems, right, or discussion groups, right, and also the company website could be used to improve these and improve the connectivity between all these parties and take it into a higher level. And the Q4, where the external drivers are low but the internal drivers are high degree of internal connectivity and pressure to improve its business process, but external connectivity by customers and competitors are low, right? So what you can do is widespread internal use of internet-based technologies, since it is internal drivers are high, such as internet and extranets, to improve the information on sharing. We know that intranet is basically the network where used by the internal parties, right? And extranet is the network where used by external parties, but registered external parties such as customers, partners, such people, right? Once you think of the extranet, and you can use the internal drivers, that internal abilities that you have, link with the extranet and improve the extranet even in information sharing. Therefore, in such a situation where you can see that you can identify where your company is lying out of these 4 quadrants, and based on the place that your company lying, where you can easily think of the step that you can go with the support of technology. That's the use of positioning metrics. Therefore, most of the companies position to these places and think that which position that out of these 4 quadrants that company can take, and react based on the position to improve themselves into a higher position in the industry, right? So that is another tool that we can use for the purpose in getting the support of the strategic impact of the technology, or with the support of new technologies such as e-business or e-commerce applications. Right, now with this, we can think about the organization, business application planning process. After the strategic phase of business IT planning has occurred, we know that we have gone through a process of identifying what technologies are most important for organization, right? So once you identify those technologies, right, IT priorities for addressing the strategic business priorities, right? Once you think of business priorities, right, you need to have different proposals, right? Different proposals. That now, since you know the business priorities, after you use those technologies, use those techniques and models, you can simply understand what are the business priorities with the support of CEO of the organization. And information technology proposals need to be developed with that. That's why we say that CIO also need to come into the table and start discussion with that. And you need to have business case for investing in e-business projects, right? Which means that business case mean that business people or the people, those who are thinking of the business side of the organization, need to have a proper argument in investing in business activities. That's why from the beginning I explained the whole organization need to work on this. You need to think about the vision of the organization, and based on that, your direction of technology implementation need to be changed in that way, rather than thinking as two different aspects, right? Business application planning process, uh, it includes considerable IT proposal, information technology proposals, right? You need to consider, and addressing the strategic business priorities of the company, and planning for application development and implementation. So the key, once you understand the key objectives, right, and once you prioritize the key objectives, and action plan will be there for planning for application development and implementation. Application development is not, or should not happen merely as an accident. It should have a argument. That's the thing that is explained here again and again, right? So here, this is a process where after you identify the business priorities, after you develop the business case and get the consent of the business and IT people to go for e-business project, you need to plan for application development, because it will be a huge process where you need to think of many different aspects of the organizational activities, right? Therefore, this process is a continuation of the process that we have discussed in the previously planning, and application development will be the end of this. But in this process, application here today, what we have planned is to understand this step-by-step process and different models, different technologies available to do this activity. And here, this is only a e-business architecture planning, not to go in detail, but to just to have idea. Here you can identify the business model and application components which support with the business model. This is the repository in the sense that storage of information, and as you can see that e-business process, business models are always linked. Yeah, business model is linked with the e-business process, right? Yeah, you can inter-enterprise and internal activities are relating each other, right? Organizational processes and data models need to be developed, right? Which is always supported by e-business strategies, right? Where you have understand earlier goals, right? Requirements and constraints related to e-business, where you need to identify with the strategies, and e-business application architecture also support to this as different component-based applications, right? So we also think of application components where it support to the business models is the main focus in developing in getting the business application architecture, and technology infrastructure is always need to be there, right? The IT architecture, components, development methods, different technological infrastructure. It might be hardware, it might be software, data technologies, telecommunication technologies. All these technological infrastructure should be supported in doing that. Therefore, mainly the technology will provide facilities to e-business processors. Yeah, e-business process. That is simple, or the broad architecture of the e-business planning, where we discuss about the development of e-business, development of not only the e-business but any application with this process as the final outcome in the next discussions that we do in the next week. But here this discussion go into the implementation side. After this today's discussion, as I initially explained, is about the identifying the strategies and evaluating and identify the mainly strategies and providing all the facilities and start the planning process, and we take the planning process into the level of the development, right? So this is the architecture, and the next week we're going to discuss about the information system development in detail, but this discussion also goes into the implementation side, or some people call it as deployment side, right? So deployment is very much important, or the implementation is very much important to understand, because assuming that you have the running system in your hand and your organization need to do that, then what is the implementation from your own wording? Any idea?
So putting into the action what we have planned.
Yes, putting into the action, in the sense, if you are thinking of the information system, IS implementation is it linked with lot of other activities. It might be linked with the training people, it might be linking with documentation, it might be linking with say data and data resources, conversion, right? Likewise, different things are linked with the implementation. Later on, at the time of development, we're going to discuss about the total implementation process, but simply the implementation in the information system related discussions, or the deployment as another term for implementation, we discuss mainly about the things that we have developed in under the lab environment. We'll try to put that into the real environment, right? Therefore, it's very difficult. Most of the time, IS expert says that implementation failures are the most difficult things to handle for an information system developers. Most of the time, IS failures, around 80% of IS failures are there in the time of the implementation, right? It's a very painful, because why? You have spent a lot of money on development, but then the implementation, if it is fail, it will be a very difficult thing for an organization, right? So that's why it says that implementation is a very important process in the information system development, or the part of the information system development. This is true that many companies plan changes very well. Few may convert the plan into action, right? You know that by experience, organizations can plan, but planning the converting the plan into the action is most difficult thing, right? You say that if this is true, even if senior management consistently identified e-business as an area of a great opportunity, right? You may understand that e-business opportunities are there. There are a lot of opportunities in electronic business, but even though these people or top level managers understand that, in the time of implementing, if the real users not accepting as it is, and if the real users not using that in a proper way, if not accepting that, that will be a great difficulty the organization might face, right? So that's why I say that the converting plan into the action is very difficult, and that's why it says that many companies fail at the time of the implementation. Here, this diagram explain you the implementation plan, how many business have undergone multiple major reorganizations since early 1980s, because this is the way that most of the time people introduce technology to their organization, right? Mainly people use technologies for the sake of improving the efficiency, right? Later on, from 1980, people use technology. We call it as computerization, right? Improve efficiency. Thereafter, business process reengineering, right? Business process reengineering was a buzzword in around 1990s or 2000 area. That in that time period, BPM is a very much highly used buzzword, right? And after a while, technology was used to as a new business initiatives, right? So once you think of these several changes, the level of change as here And the scope of business change, as here, was differ, right? Here you can say the level of change is the efficiency at the bottom, right? And model-based practices might be there. Sometimes we call it as the you might understand what you call different routines might be changing, right? Routine changes. So things might be there here to change the routines and change few things. And best practices in the sense you might be doing some business process re-engineering activities here. And here you might be redefine the core business. You might be there in the tourism, but later on you might be change yourself into the web development organization or advertising organization. Likewise, you might be changing totally with the technology, might be the level of change. These levels of change might be possible to see in some organizations, even in different industries nowadays. And here, scope of business change, right? Usually in technology might be initially put it into a single function, only HR, only marketing. But once it come into the core process, right, it might be move into different other functional areas or combination of functional areas, core process. And it might be going to the supply chain in the sense organization, the suppliers, distributors, retailers, and ultimately the customers, right? Likewise, the total supply chain might be covered with the technology. That's the time that we might go into the different business process re-engineering activities, combining all these parties together. And also it might be, the change might be going to the extended value chain, right? Your system might not only cover your organization, might be covering the supply side and the customer side, right? The enterprise business application that you have discussed earlier is linked with this, because ERP is a system where it operates inside the organization, basically by the people of the organization. But supply chain management system is not only used only by the people in the organization, but also the people as suppliers linked to that system. Therefore, once you think of the e-business suite, such as Oracle e-business suite, is a combination of these applications: ERP, supply chain, customer relationship management systems. All these tools could be combined together, where it can be take information from all these different sources, right? We call it as extended value chain, right? Your value chain is extended, and you might be linked with the parties as suppliers, you might be linked with the parties as customers, and combine things together into the organization, right? So that is the way that companies are changing, right? Changing from the zeroth level to different other levels, right? So here, this diagram explain about the way that e-business or the latest organizational changes happen with the support of a technology. And I like to show you another diagram where you can understand that clearly how the information system implementation and the risk involved with that implementation or the change, right? This is another diagram where you can see the organizational change and the risk and the reward, right? So here here this side is y-axis is the risk, the x-axis is the return, right? So usually information technology introduced to the organization, we call it as the automation, right? Automation is the risk is low, the return also low. It is happened some time back around 90s, right? People introduce the term automation. So what they do, they introduce in computer instead of business, instead of a human, and all the human effort related activities are started to replaced by computing, right? The computing power comes as the very much effective tool, and we call that as the automation. And the rationalization is something like we are going another step ahead. You are identifying the different routines, different activities that you do as routines, and follow these routines and change the routines, right? Change the routines with the support of technology. Sometimes you might be earlier put the signature in attendance. Later on, you might be doing something like using a barcode reader, and the barcode is printed in the identity card. You might be striping the barcode reader with the card and mark your attendance, right? So in the routine that earlier signing in and signing out now might have changed into the that sort of a mechanism. And re-engineering is something like it's a business process re-engineering or engineering. Basically, here in the rationalization, the risk is somewhat higher than the automation. The return also high because some of the say unused routines or some of the say routines which are not used that much might be removed from the process. Then the routines are very much shorter as well as the easier, which means that the return is high as well as the risk also high in rationalization. The re-engineering is somewhat thinking differently. You might be think that right, your attendance might taking attendance might be difficult in what you call um, taking a signature or taking a asking employees to stripe their hand or put the thumb onto the machine. You might be moving to the radio frequency ID as a attendance making mechanism, as attendance taking technology. Your identity card, employee identity card embed with the RFID tag, and employee not need to put the thumb at the entrance or stripe the card. Employee can just walk through the door, and RFID receiver will identify that employee enter to the building, right? Something like that might be a re-engineering type of activity, right? So that with the RFID technology, radio frequency ID technology, could be used to take the attendance, right? The risk is high and the return also high in that way. And finally, the paradigm shift, something like that you experience in nowadays. You don't need to, you might ask not to come to work physically, but you can work from home, but your work is tracked, right? Otherwise, you might not get paid. So your work is tracked based on the work that you do. Therefore, you are not putting the attendance in and out is not there, but you are in and out. You are logged into the system and work for 8 hours or a day might be identified as your work. So the risk is high and the return also high because you don't need to have a separate location for employee, and you don't need to spend money on the AC or any other infrastructure facilities you need to provide, environmental creation facilities, nothing. Therefore, the return is very much high. But the thing is that earlier in and out process, now no in and out, nothing. Employee log into the system and the employee attendance tracking happen based on the work that is performed at home, right? So that's a paradigm shift, thinking from a different angle about the same process. So this is kind of a change, and the technological change, and how with the technological change you can see from the automation, rationalization, re-engineering paradigm shift, the risk getting high as well as the return is also getting higher and higher, right? So this is the kind of a situation where we can understand the implementation of information technology. The earlier diagram and this diagram is a similar thing explained, where you can go into different levels of improvements with the technology, where you can think of the scope changes as well as level of change, and your activities also change, where we going to go into the new business initiatives is the thing that I explained there earlier as paradigm shift. You are thinking from a different viewpoint, and your business, total business might be changed into a new business, such as the Apple was identified earlier as a technological company, but later on it was identified as the entertainment company. Likewise, new business initiatives might be end up, organization might be end up with the new business initiatives with the support of technology, right? And with all these changes, this is obvious, right? End user resistance, right? Every time that you are working in organization, if something new comes into the organization, we have a kind of a resistance, right? The similar thing is there in any organizational systems. Once you are experiencing new things, the resistance is inevitable with the people, those who are affected by that system or by that change, right? that is explained here as technologies and CRM, work support technologies and CRM. Customer relationship management systems was introduced some time back, but the initial stage nowadays it's different to some extent. The initial stage, up to 75% of CRM projects fail to meet their objectives, right? The mainly what was happening is it's a cultural issue, such as CRM systems components such as Salesforce automation was introduced, but people not use Salesforce automation. People used to have the sales agents coming physically to their shops. Sometimes the person there, the mudalali there at the shop might have a lot of say contacts with the sales agents. Therefore, because of that, the sales agent is always having a good rapport with the mudalali. In that case, what happened? The shop owner will always not ready to give information to a system, but he or she like to have a face-to-face contact and place the order. That sort of a cultural issues might impact on the automation problems in earlier in CRM. Because of that reason, most of the time, initial stage of the CRM was fail, right? That is not because of the failures or the inability of the system. That is mainly because of cultural issues, right? So the end user resistance as such will always there in new implementation. Therefore, what we can do, keys to solve end user resistance or the problems, is that educate and training, right? That's the one simple thing, because end user resistance not only in the organization. Basically, if it is an organization, in an organization, usually the people, once you introduce technology, there are different categories of people most of the time impacted with the technological implementation, right? Can you say, anybody can say that who are the people or what sort of jobs that initially introduced or replaced by technologies? What sort of jobs initially replaced by technologies?
Stenographer.
Stenographer, yes, or typist, stenographers, or have you heard of somebody known as leave clerks? There's no leave clerks nowadays, because leave clerks were there initially some time back, where the attendance systems was not there. The attendance were taken by signatures, and leave clerks were the main job of the leave clerk is to identify the number of leave taken by the particular employee, and at the time of running the payroll, leave clerk need to give all this information, right? But once with the introduction of employee attendance systems, there's no need of a leave clerk. The employee attendance system can take care of all the information, because it can track all the people in time and out time, and then automatically calculate how many number of days that person has gone leave, or a short leave, or a full day leave, right? Likewise, most of the time, the routine jobs are replaced initially by technologies. Routine jobs, if the job is very routine, same thing has to be done again and again. Most of the time, computer applications were replaced by such jobs were replaced by computer applications, routine jobs. Therefore, those who are doing routine jobs will always has to leave the company with the introduction of technology. Therefore, automation in the initial stage was very much furious for the people, those who are doing routine jobs, right? That sort of a fear is there with the technological people, with the people in the organization. That's why end user resistance are very much high initially in any technological implementation, right? So education and training is a one way to get rid of that fear. And one other thing is end user involvement in organizational change and system development, right? That's another thing that people mostly do, end user involvement. So it is not developer-led systems, it's a user-led systems, right? User is the leading party in system development. That's why sometimes you might be asked to, even you are not a non-technical person, your domain knowledge will be helpful in developing technologies. That's why you might be asked to involve with the technology system development team, and require involvement and commitment of the top management and all stakeholders, right? Top management involvement is a must for any system development, because the blessings of top management is should be there to such a change. And all stakeholders, all the parties, it might be a party, those who are infected with technological involvement, technological implementation, those people need to be involved with the system development, right? System that inconvenience or frustrate user cannot be effective, no matter how technology elegant or efficient, right? So once you are thinking of a nice technology, latest technology, but if it affect the people, those who are going to use the system will not going to be effective or not going to be used in an organization, and it will not going to be effectively used in an organization. And this is a kind of a change management, right? Key dimensions of the change management. You have here, you can see that operational and technology, strategic change, where impact of business, right? Impact of business is very much high in strategic change. Strategic level, operational level is somewhat low. And here you can see that three things: technology, process, and the people, right? The ones who think of the level of difficulty of change or to time to resolve, the highest is people. You can change the technology, you can change the processes, but people change is very difficult, level of difficulty, right? So can you see that x-axis show the level of difficulty, y-axis show the impact on the business, and you can see that change the leaders, right? These are some of the things: loose or tight controls, executive sponsorships and support, right? Alignment of conditions and satisfaction. Likewise, in the strategic level, you can do these things, and in the operational level, what you can do is that you can knowledge can be transferred, train them, right? So the retention of people and recruitment could be done. Likewise, different things could be done to resolve or mitigate the problems that might be arise. But main thing is to change the mindset of the people, right? That's why aligned with this, some people sometime back, there's a concept came as Levitt model. You might have heard of Levitt model in change. What the theory is called Levitt. I've said that if you need to change the technology in organization, change the technology, change the people, change the organizational process and the tasks, everything together in an organization. Therefore, what Levitt have suggested in a change of technology is change everything together, not as separate. Don't try to change the technology, don't try to change the task, don't try to change the organizational processes and people separately. Change everything together, where it will be not feel that much to the people. Otherwise, if you change everything, if the people are not changed, the system will not success, because people are the ultimate party, those who are using the technology, right? And with that, change management came into the discussion with the implementation. That's why implementation of e-business applications need to be involved with the action plan, and assigning managers as change sponsors. Sometimes we call it as catalyst. or a change sponsor, right? Change sponsor might be sometime a system analysis or a business analyst might be a change sponsor, and developing employee change team might be there, and encourage open communication and feedback about organizational change. Every time be transparent and discuss the change it's going to be happen, might always minimize the number of resistance, right? The change sponsor might take a role of a huge role, communicating the change to the parties, those who are work as stakeholders. These are the key tactics recommended by the change experts. Involve as many people as possible in e-business planning and application development, as I called as the people involvement, end user involvement, and make constant changes as expected part of the culture. If it is constantly changing, people will not feel that they are changing, right? Tell everyone as much as possible about everything, as often as possible in person, right? Don't give a common message, give in person. If it is somewhat important to that specific person, face-to-face explanation is very much important, and explain everything without hiding information. All the advantages and disadvantages explain, and you can simply make them change. Otherwise, they will resist, and the total system project implementation might fail. And make liberal use of financial incentives and recognition, right? This is one other very good tactic used by change management. Give incentives and recognition. Financial incentives most of the time change people, and they're ready to be changed once their payment will increase, or once they are having a additional advantage financially. And work within the company culture, not around it. Every time understand the culture of the company, and use that culture. Don't try to do something like known as a double game in implementing information system applications. And these are some change management processes: set up, analyze, definitions, and transitions, where you can think of different create and change vision, define change strategy, develop leadership, build commitment, manage people performance, and deliver business benefits, develop culture and design organization. You can see different steps we have from setup, analyze, definitions, and transitions you can do with the support of change management process, right? So that is the idea behind the things that we have discussed today. We discussed about role of planning in the business use of information technology. We discussed about the scenario approach and planning for competitive advantage as the examples, and different other planning role of planning business models, and the different applications and architectures relevant to that. And finally, we discussed about the change management, a solution for end user resistance, and how information technology could be implemented as a change management process, and a strategic application uh, implementation, how a change manager need to be operate, also discuss in our discussion, right? The next day we can go into the information system development activity, and I hope to have some interactive activity there with this, and prefer to have more people join with the discussion. I see that today we have only around 29 people join, but prefer to have more people join with the discussions next week, because we're going to do some interactive activity in relevant to information system application development and solution development. All right. With that, we can conclude the today's discussion. If you have any question, we can discuss.